The field behind the school. The summer before everything went wrong always feels brighter in my memory. Maybe that's because we didn't realize how fragile it all was. The long nights, the stupid jokes, the way we believed nothing bad could ever happen to us. We were 17, reckless, and convinced the world didn't care enough about our little town to bother us. Our hangout spot was behind the abandoned grade school on the far edge of town, a baseball field nobody had used in decades. The bleachers were rusted, the fencing half collapsed, and a warped orange lamplight flickered over it all like a tired guardian. The place felt forgotten by time, but somehow that made it perfect. Nobody came there except us. Not teachers. Not cops. Not parents. Especially not parents. Most of our home lives were either loud or lonely, and the field was the one place that felt like ours. Especially for Tim. Tim's mother had a habit of calling the cops on him for anything, existing too loudly, breathing wrong, coming home 5 minutes late. But at the field, he could breathe. We all could. Still, even before the nightmare started, the field had this presence. When the lamplight buzzed on at night, everything outside its reach vanished into pitch black. Sometimes, when we were sitting quiet, I'd stare into those woods and swear I felt eyes staring back. Like something was always waiting just a little too far out of sight. But one of the guys would laugh or toss a bottle cap at my head, and the feeling would pass. I didn't know then that the thing watching us wasn't in the woods at all. The night everything changed started normal enough. My friend Johnny and I had planned to meet at the field. He texted me he'd be right behind, which usually meant he'd be 10 minutes late. He was the one in our group who always drifted in last, always smiling, always apologizing with some story about why he'd gotten distracted. But when I got to the field that night, his car wasn't there. I waited on the bleachers. 10 minutes. Then 20. Then I pulled out a joint, figuring he was just running late. The woods felt louder that night, the lamplight weaker, but I tried to ignore it. After 30 more minutes of silence from Johnny, the thrill of being alone out there started to twist into something darker. Every snap in the trees made me flinch. I finally put out the joint and decided to head back. I didn't walk. I jogged. I kept checking my phone, no texts, no calls. Just that bright screen glowing back at me like it knew something I didn't. By the time I got back to my car, frustration had replaced fear. I sat there for another 10 minutes waiting for him, then drove home annoyed but not alarmed. Not yet. When I woke up the next morning, he still hadn't replied. That was weird. Johnny was glued to his phone. But I didn't feel the panic until my mom knocked on my door asking if I'd seen him. Something in her eyes made the world suddenly tilt. Within hours, everyone in town knew. Search parties formed. My friends and I wandered through the woods behind the school with flashlights, shouting his name until our voices cracked. But the forest only swallowed our words, never giving anything back. Days passed. Then weeks. The cops found nothing. No tracks, no clothes, no signs of a struggle. His car was gone. His phone was dead. Johnny had simply vanished. Everyone started whispering that he'd run away. That he'd finally done something wild and impulsive like he always joked he would. But I knew better. Johnny would have told me. He would have left a note, probably taped beneath the bleachers, where only we would think to look. But he didn't. And the last place anyone had seen him alive was the field. I didn't go back there for a month. Not until the grief stopped being sharp and started turning into something hotter, anger. Anger at whoever took him. Anger at whatever we missed. Anger at that stupid field that used to feel like home. So one night, alone, I went back. And that's when I saw them. 3 people sitting on our bleachers, unmoving, like statues. And one man dancing, skipping around, smiling like he'd heard the world's funniest joke. A face I knew. A face I couldn't place. A face I swear had been watching us long before Johnny disappeared. And when I turned to leave, his eyes followed me. Just like something in those woods always had. The dancing man. I didn't sleep the night I saw them on the bleachers. Their stillness replayed in my head like a glitching video loop, the three silent figures and the man who moved like happiness was something he wore, not felt. He twirled with this strange, unsettling joy, like he wasn't performing for anyone but something inside himself. But what unsettled me most was the familiarity. I knew that face. Not in a "we once bumped into each other at a grocery store" way. No, this was deeper. A memory I couldn't grasp. Like recognizing a shadow. For days, I tried convincing myself I had imagined it. Stress, grief, lack of sleep. And for a bit, I believed that lie. Until the next part of the nightmare began. 2 nights after the bleachers incident, I drove back to the abandoned school. I told myself it was to look for clues. But I think I just needed to see something that proved the world was still normal. That strange people didn't suddenly appear in the places we thought were safe. The abandoned school sat like a grave in the middle of the woods, windows smashed, walls tagged with old graffiti, metal siding stained by rust. When I pulled into the gravel lot, everything looked exactly how it always had. Except for one thing. A car was parked near the back corner. A very specific car. Familiar in shape. Familiar in the way it made my stomach tighten. Johnny's car. Or at least, the same model. But as I approached, the headlights flashed on, blinding, sudden, aggressive. Before I could think, I threw the car into reverse and peeled out of the lot, gravel spitting behind me. The headlights didn't chase me. They just watched. Someone was letting me know they saw me. I didn't go back after that. Not for a long time. Not until something far worse happened. Weeks passed. The town lost hope. The search parties stopped. People tried to move on. But I couldn't. Every night before bed, I replayed my last real memory of Johnny, the glow of the lamplight flickering across his face as he laughed on the bleachers. And then the silence. The absence. The guilt. One late July afternoon, I grabbed my old yearbooks, hoping to distract myself. I flipped through the pages with numb fingers, until I reached a blue and white spread of the sports teams. That's when everything inside me turned cold. In the background of a blurry baseball photo, behind the team, standing near the dugout, was him. The dancing man. Same unkempt hair. Same thin grin. Same eyes that seemed too hollow for a smile like that. A school janitor. A janitor who looked exactly like the man dancing on the bleachers. The room felt suddenly too small, too quiet, too wrong. My heart pounded as I sent a picture of the page to my group chat. No one knew what to do. I printed out the photo and drove to the police station. The officers listened politely, nodding along like they were watching someone spiral in real time. But still, they did a background check, or at least they said they did. They returned the next day with a shrug. No records. No address. No employee file. Even the SSN leads nowhere. A ghost in their system. A ghost with a job at our school. A ghost who danced on the same bleachers my best friend sat on 2 nights before he disappeared. I stopped feeling angry after that. I started feeling afraid. Near the end of summer, my friends convinced me to go back to the field. For closure, they said. I hated the idea, but I couldn't keep being the only one running from it. So we went together, 5 of us walking through the familiar woods that had never felt less familiar. When we reached the clearing, the lamplight buzzed on with a sickly orange flicker. The same bleachers. The same silence. But the air felt heavier, like breathing underwater. We sat for a few minutes, forcing small talk, pretending everything was okay. But every time my eyes drifted toward the woods, I felt it, a pressure. A stare. The sensation of being watched by something patient. Something remembering. I stood first. Let's go. My friends didn't argue. As we walked out of the clearing, I looked back one last time. Someone was standing under the lamplight. A tall figure. Still. Expressionless. Watching. The second I blinked, he was gone. A week later, at 6 a.m., I stopped at a Dunkin' Donuts before work. I was half asleep, zoning out in line, when the hairs on the back of my neck suddenly rose. I looked up. There he was. The dancing man. standing by the door, staring at me with a smile that didn't belong to a human face. And then, he walked out. Fast. I followed him outside. Not because I was brave. Because I knew, in that moment, the part of the story that everyone else was too afraid to say out loud. He had my best friend's car. The same car. The same plate. The same nightmare finally stepping into the daylight. The ones who watch. When I stepped out of the Dunkin' Donuts that morning, the cold air hit my lungs like a warning. The man was already halfway across the lot, moving fast toward a dark sedan idling near the exit. Even from a distance, I recognized the slope of his shoulders, the way his arms dangled a little too loosely at his sides, like a puppet held up by invisible strings. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He just looked back at me, smiling, almost excited. The passenger door swung open and he dove inside. For a second, the early morning sun glinted off the back bumper of the car. Enough for me to see the plate. 4POC 207. Johnny's car. The breath left me. Before I could scream or move, the sedan jerked forward and shot toward the main road. I sprinted after it, but the tires shrieked across the asphalt, and the car tore away, disappearing into traffic like smoke. I stood on the curb shaking, staring down the road long after it was gone. I didn't call the police. I knew exactly what they'd say. Instead, something else began to settle in me, something far colder than fear. Something like clarity. Johnny didn't run away. He didn't disappear. He was taken. And they were still around. I wish I could tell you I became brave after that. That I marched back to the field and uncovered some secret, some hidden truth about the men who watched us. But I didn't. I couldn't. All I knew was that they weren't finished. Because when something watches you long enough, it doesn't just disappear. It lingers. Haunts. Wait. 4 months, I avoided the school district completely. I changed my routes, changed my routines, even started driving with my doors locked, something I'd never bothered with before. But the paranoia lived in me like a second shadow. Every time I drove past tree lines, I imagined faces between the branches. Every time I stopped at a gas station at night, I checked the reflections in the windows. Every time I turned a corner, I listened for footsteps. But the worst part wasn't the fear. It was the possibility, the small, cruel hope that maybe Johnny was still alive. And then, one night, that hope turned into something darker. 2 months after the Dunkin' Donuts sighting, I woke at 3:17 a.m. to a sound I couldn't place. Not a bang or a crash, but a soft rhythm. Like someone tapping on metal. Tap, tap, tap. I sat up slowly. The room was dark, except for a thin beam of streetlight cutting across my floor. The tapping continued, steady and deliberate. It was coming from outside my window. I rose from bed, every part of my body cold. I moved quietly, carefully, like any sudden movement would make something crash through the glass. My hands shook as I pulled back the curtain just enough to see. A man stood on my lawn. Motionless. Silhouetted beneath the street lamp. Facing my window. I couldn't see his face clearly, just the outline of his head tilted upward, watching my bedroom. But he wasn't tapping. His hands hung by his sides. The tapping came from somewhere else. It was coming from my front door. Tap, tap, tap. I backed away from the window, heart slamming hard against my ribs. For a moment, I simply stood there frozen, listening to the rhythmic taps, the way they never sped up or slowed down. Whoever was at the door wasn't trying to get in. They were letting me know they could. The tapping stopped suddenly. Silence swallowed the house. I waited. 1 minute. 2. 10. I didn't dare look out again until the sun rose. When I finally checked the yard, the man was gone. But beneath the street lamp, something small and metallic glinted in the grass. I walked toward it slowly, terrified of what I would find. A key. Not just any key. Johnny's spare car key. The one he always kept tied to a cheap leather fob. The leather was soaked. Still damp. I fell to my knees. Not from sadness. From the realization that they had been inside my house. Not last night. Not recently. Much longer. The key had mud on it, the same reddish-brown soil from the woods behind the abandoned school. Soil I hadn't walked through in months. Whoever took Johnny, whoever danced beneath that broken lamplight, whoever watched us for years, they never stopped. They just changed where they watched from. People ask if trauma fades with time. I wish I could say yes. But sometimes trauma doesn't fade. It evolves, learns your habits, learns your patterns, learns where you sleep, and sometimes it keeps your memories alive in ways you never wanted. I never saw Johnny again. I never saw his car. I never saw the dancing man, not fully, not clearly. But some nights, when I'm driving down a deserted road, I see flickers of orange light where no street lamps should be. And every time, I look away, because I know the truth now. Some people don't just watch. They wait. And one day, they come back for what they left behind.